I don't know. I think that's why acid is illegal. You know, it's too much all at once. Yeah.
Father.
Son. Here's to you.
Bisu.
Yes, Bisu too.
People.
Many people.
Amen. The Porters just went to church this morning.
And amen was the tip-off. It's interesting you said amen, because it stood out to me that the pastor this morning said amen.
He was an amen.
He was an amen man, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, which is kind of low life.
Yeah.
Or when it was when I was growing up.
Saying amen.
Oh yeah, not at St. Edmunds.
It's not committed enough.
Right.
Open your mouth.
You just sounded it out. Yeah. It's different.
Yeah. Do you mean this? Yeah. Amen. The mouth only has to just open a little bit, but amen. You gotta put some
That's right. Commitment.
belly.
Right.
Which, as he said today, it should involve your head, heart, and your belly. Though I did notice a stark lack of loins. He didn't say that.
Right.
And I was like,
So that was good.
yeah.
Yeah, I hadn't.
Yeah. What was that like
I'm
for
not
you?
sure.
You
When,
said it was a kind of a blast from the past.
Well, yes. The the red and white surplices and cassocks of the choir.
Mm-hmm. This is a Presbyterian situation.
Right. Probably. I wonder when that building was built.
Mm.
Maybe the late 19th. I don't know.
It's a beautiful building.
It is outstanding.
Beautiful windows, huge windows.
Mm-hmm.
And
Very spacious. Huge. I can't imagine how tall that ceiling is. It's got to be 50 feet easy.
Yeah, gotta love those tall ceilings.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. It was good.
yeah. You glad?
I'm glad. And it reminded me of my childhood.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways. Yeah.
That's part of that. Definitely played into my motivation.
Oh. That's fair.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. But
Because you grew up going to church, right?
absolutely.
Every week.
Every Sunday.
Every Sunday.
Yeah, for many, many years. Probably. I doubt that I went every Sunday in high school, but definitely before that, and most of the time in high school. Yeah, I guess it was, now that I think of it. Yeah, probably through high school, because I was also an usher.
What do ushers do?
After I got old enough. They would help the old people to
I
their...
didn't go to church.
They would help the old people to their pew, maybe. mostly, you'd look solemn in the back, and then we would pass the collection plate, which were essentially baskets on long poles, so you could stick it down that pew, and people could reach and could put something in there, and then you can pull it back, and then we'd get it all together and put it in a big velvet bag at the back of the church.
Wow.
And then whoever was designated, or I guess it would be a couple of them, that would then take it up to the altar where the priest was and say, "Here's the money. Bless us, everyone."
The money is here.
The money is here. Yeah, that was really something.
When would it happen in the service?
Oh, near the end. There would be the collection. There might be one more song, and then it would be over. Yeah.
That was something that today was kind of surprised me, that it seemed like the collection part was pretty early on in the whole thing.
It was.
And it was it felt weird to me.
Yeah, I don't know.
I have a whole cloud of thoughts around that as well, but it was a strange.
Yeah, I was a little surprised at the timing too. It reminded me of, like and subscribe and
yeah.
leave a note in the comments before they tell you anything.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, too early. Yeah, but that was really something. I remember going to was it called a school? No, it had another name. When the classes I had to take to be confirmed in the Episcopal Church. Because you have to go to classes, I don't know, for weeks. And they give you a test, as I recall.
Yeah, they mean it.
Yes, right, you've got to know this stuff. Yeah, but that's the only way you could take communion. Then you have to be
you have to
confirmed.
Incentivize it.
Right. This is a privilege. You have to, you have to be committed to do this.
Yeah, so the inside was kind of plain.
Right.
And it that was the kind of feeling of the whole thing for me. It felt very lots of cream in this coffee.
Yes.
Make sure the coffee is not too dark.
Yeah.
The color of the walls was kind of like the amount of
Right, that's about right. Yeah, that's good.
And very nice walls. There's a sweetness and it tastes nice.
Yeah, it ain't gonna wake you up right away though. It's gonna take a little. Yeah, my recollection is that St. Edmund's had been a Greek Orthodox church.
This is where you were going as a kid?
Where I went, yeah. And
Episcopal church?
Right, well, it was Episcopal when I was there, but my understanding is that it had been a Greek Orthodox church. And so was, had a bell tower and steeple, of course, and lots of dark wood and frescoes, on the walls and on the ceiling in particular. It's where you paint on wet plaster so that the pigment is absorbed into the strata that you're painting on,
Okay.
rather than just paint on a surface.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what Michelangelo and a lot of guys did.
Okay.
Because it was permanent.
It's a way of.
It's here forever.
Didn't know that. That's cool.
Yeah, but so there were frescoes. There was lots of gold. The altar was lots of gold, big gold things, and big gold candlesticks and marble, lots of marble.
Yeah. Yeah.
And other little paintings around the. Is that the nave? That might be the nave. So there was a series of paintings of Christ, the Stations of the Cross, and very fancy.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of ornament is my bedrock. That's what it started from.
Which seems that's the more orthodox situation.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And Presbyterian seems like it's a bit removed. It's a
little more modest, kind of. Yeah. That's the feel. I don't know anything about that.
That was definitely the feel.
Right.
Yeah.
So not so. The golden marble and all that kind of stuff was to impress the congregation.
Mm-hmm.
To kind of give them some awe,
glory and.
Right. And these people were not about that.
Mm-hmm.
So that was cool.
Yeah. Okay. So that's a very different contrast from childhood, Anthony.
Mm-hmm.
Church. Yeah, I'm kind of having this reaction of like, if that service we just experienced were kind of representative of a lot of modern Christianity, where it's very like kind of apologetic about itself.
And, kind of shy.
And it's like, sorry. We'll try to keep it contained and, and get through all the things we need, please, God.
Yeah, right. Yeah, with your help, Lord.
Yeah. There was an undeniable, there's a trying of a sorts. Like there's a trying to meditate on goodness. In a beautiful space, and I enjoyed the community element at the beginning, where like there was a specific moment where you go greet a neighbor,
right?
And that's a nice.
Right, we never did that.
Yeah.
No, you don't do that in here, right? You're going to take that outside.
Yeah, you can do that at home.
Right. So now, what can you name or feel around for what has sparked this interest in you?
Why? Why go through this?
Right.
Why go to church?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a curiosity. That's been, it's a few things. It's a curiosity that's been growing through the years just about Christianity, being on the outside my whole life. looking in, and especially through Jordan Peterson and his take on things that I have really gotten a lot out of. Has kind of made me more curious about what's going on with Christianity, and so that's a general, the general thrust, and then I've been a seeker for a long time, coming out of high school, really. And specifically these days, I'm wrestling with my own ideas of spirituality and God, and I think wrestling with them more directly than I have
Good.
As a younger man, and developing a sense of what spirituality will look like for the next 10 years, and then everything will break down and I'll decide again.
Right.
But the spirituality that I had been running on, I guess, has broken down, and in a place of finding out what it looks like now or something. So that's a part of it. And then the notion of church is really attractive to me. A place of community where that level of meditation and focus is happening. Like, that's something that's long been important to me, whether that was like going to the Dharma Center for a time, or yoga classes, and then eventually dance church, which became like the best display of that for me, and metal shows. Like, I put them all in the same kind of, my reach for those things is kind of the same, comes from the same place. And I'm working on trying to carry that torch forward of dance church.
Good.
Making a space in which people can experience a kind of worship. And so I'm just personally interested in not only having a space like that, but like making a space like that, and trying to engage that issue a bit of like, we need that. We need a space to worship and commune, and I need it. I need it fundamentally.
Yeah.
And
it's really all you can be sure about. That's what you need.
Yeah, I hear other people do, and I guess that people do. I suspect.
Right. It seems that way.
I speculate, but I definitely do, and I definitely do. And I've really experienced it, like pieces of it. It's like, that experience, I've gotten little fragments in different places, and dance church has definitely been the most there.
It's very easy to like. I find.
The Institute?
Yes. I mean, there's, yeah, I don't have a lot of words about it, because my experience of it anyway is in nonverbal. It's not, but I'm aware of that sense of community. And that's very pleasant.
Yeah, yeah, there's a very authentic kind of bond that can grow in that space where you're
yeah, where we're all, it's just a bunch of humans.
Yep.
In the same species.
Yeah, and the goal is being, for these couple hours, communing with your own experience in an immediate way, immediately, and expressing it, embodying it, and moving it. And there's a real authentic sense of community that has grown out of that. Like because we are speaking of technically something that was in the past, but as a spirit that I'm trying to take forward. And it's very much rooted in the 5 rhythms. Mechanically, it's the mechanics under it. But so that question of making that how do we get? It would be great if we had a church. And a church that worked. It was like functional. Did what people wanted it to do. And
because one hitch at least is that people wanted to do different things.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's a little, it kind of reminds me of Word Church at 1078 on
I haven't
second Monday.
I haven't been.
Yeah, it's good. I haven't been. It's been a couple months, I guess, and I'm going to miss this next one. But I like knowing it's there.
I should check that out.
You should. It's well, it's just a spontaneous volunteer. I guess it's not really spontaneous. There's a schedule now, but it's just people, who want to, who are involved with words in a recurring and probably serious way. Because they're all sorts. And ages, which is pretty unusual these days.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. So it's a kind of an anti-silo. It's not just, because there are these people with all kinds of different interests and backgrounds and schooling and
it's pretty wide open.
Right.
Where comparatively church today was pretty exclusively old people, and
I couldn't that.
There was like one youngish person in the choir I saw,
right,
and then me, and part of what I'm interested in, I'm seeing too, is like, I do have this kind of desire, fascination with like what do people need?
Oh.
What is like what does humanity need? And sometimes that goes too far because I don't pay attention to what I need, but like
Yeah.
but I think it is a there's something about that that's been a long-running desire in me, trying to get at this essence of what I think is needed for a better time in life. And yeah, there I liked the spirit of the Lectio Divina,
Right.
The sacred reading,
Right.
which the execution of it was like kind of like the walls. I felt like, but I appreciated it basically was a practice of, he had a specific passage that he read 3 different times, and there was an invitation to really meditate on the words, on the passage, spend time with it, see how it moved in you, what it did.
Right.
I like that element, the personal element, and the kind of workshopping on a thing.
Right.
And that kind of engagement, interactive engagement, I think is something that's so sorely missing, it seems like, from church. And like, yeah, we got just a tiny bit of that, but everything else was mostly this, like, and it seems, and I haven't been to a lot of church, but it seems like that's the case, where it's very spectacle driven, and it's very much like you and then God, or you and then Jesus, and there's moments of ritual kind of representation of a connection, like taking communion is the clearest part of that.
Yeah. Your mother used to say it was too worshipy. Worshipy, yeah. So that you're, because it kind of essentially emphasizes the duality. There's you and there's God.
Yeah.
And they are not to be confused.
Preacher in between.
Right, the mediator or something.
Yeah. And
yeah, not very Zen.
Yeah, I'm like, I think I partially was also driven to go to feel uncomfortable. to in that sense of like, what is needed here, like, because I think community and beautiful spaces in which community gather and meditate upon value and ideals and the idea of hope and the transcendent is like crucial and really important, but needs an upgrade and an update. And I think part of why I went was to go feel the one. Of course, there's a billion churches and they all have different flavors, and but to feel one aspect, one angle of like where it's at and what it made me want, and
what did it make you want?
Yeah, yeah. What did it make me want? It made me want way more immediacy, inspiration, passion, aliveness. Like the feeling walking away was a kind of like, these people are all like, it's good that it exists. This is going to be very critical, but like that I'm about to say is the feeling was like, these are all people that are a little more polite as a result of doing this, but not necessarily alive and clear.
Yeah.
And clear about the truth of their life and their purpose on earth,
and you feel there's a way to tap into that somehow, that that's what you would want, at least from a
and
church.
That's what I experience in different forums, like dance
church.
Like there's no like today's service was very much like this, like programmed step.
Right, they had a program.
You can see how this is going to go, and hopefully the end result of that will be like something good.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
And
we hope you like it.
But it's a lot of like deferred effect, and I do think there's power to ritual and program, and absolutely, like, but it felt pretty empty. I don't suppose I should be surprised, but like it felt empty and not immediate, and part of what I was feeling in that place was like, so the heart of the thing revolved around like the passage, right? He's giving the sermon on, and part of what I was feeling was like, he's not that inspired about this passage. Like, that passage isn't that good. It's not even that cool, and it feels pretty like milquetoast, and I was feeling this sense of like, my reaction was like, yeah, there needs to be a creative freedom in the church to be able to not, if the Bible isn't inspiring you, where you come up with something that inspires you. And I was just feeling how like, it gets so limited. And granted, like JP is able to use, with his whole life, pull out some pretty amazing stuff, but I was seeing the limitation of being stuck in one book and not generating anything from yourself. And
I see what you mean.
I was just feeling the limitation in that, and I was like, personally, I was seeing it in the oldness and how people were moving, and like, when you're limited to one source of reference for inspiration, that well dries up, and And there needs to be like, yeah, because I love the idea of meditating on a story like that. I think that can be a beautiful and powerful thing.
Right. Like a koan or something.
Yeah.
Right.
But only if in that case, the pastor is inspired and passionate.
Mm.
And I imagine, now I'm just kind of on a little rant of like, I'm imagining a lot of pastors will probably feel guilty if they don't get inspired by the Bible.
Oh, yeah. They must be doing something wrong.
Yeah, it must be you. When it's like, no,
sure.
like we need your life, we need your story, we need your mojo lens through which to see the divine today.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so that was one thing that stood out to me, like we need new stories, we need the ability, there needs to be the ability to generate, like there's got to be a more spontaneous, inspired storytelling. And
yeah, that's different. But I know what you mean about there is a kind of lack of spontaneity, lack of anybody's direct involvement, really, because the passage is, I don't know, at least 1,500 years old. We don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And it's fairly regimented. What you do, what you say, the order and all that.
Yeah, with just the hope that it'll do the
this
thing.
This will work. Yeah.
Yeah, and result in salvation.
Yeah. So from some points of view, if you were spontaneous, you would be, I guess, by definition, straying from the true path or true word, or this is not supposed to come from you. You're supposed to receive it.
That some of that, but it will have to come from a person, through that person.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing, like, technically, in the engineering sense, like, how to make that happen. There's got to be room for, like, the Spirit to move. The Holy Spirit. Like, there's got to be room for it to move spontaneously. And I mean, of course, that's what I love about dancing. Is like, it's completely about how is the Spirit moving you.
Yeah, right now.
Yeah, like right now.
Yeah.
And just purely a meditation on that. And and it's immediate. It's from like moment one, ideally moment one to the end is like you're at the gates.
Right.
And like, what's up? It's like not later, it's here.
It's here and now.
Yeah, like look around
Yeah.
and move around in the garden. Like, you're here, what are you gonna do?
Yeah.
And I love that. And I think, yeah, part of what makes that is sort of a minimal structure, like just enough. Because there's got to be this disruptive. There's got to be like accounting for chaos.
Right. Because there's going to be some.
Yeah, and I mean it more like neutrally, in like the Jordan Peterson way, like the Tao way, of like. There's got to be accounting for, like, yeah, the unknown, and like if church were really trying to be a vessel for God to come through, like that would have to allow for something you probably didn't expect.
Yeah.
Unless that's yeah.
That's bound to happen sooner or later.
Yeah. And I do think, and then I do think you need a kind of structure to get there. You need a story. And part of what that looked like today was meditating on this little passage and meditating on this little mini story. But just blowing that up way more, like, let's get into it, like, let's get dramatic. Okay, now let's have some time where we consciously think about how that relates to our lives, and like, okay, now let's put ourselves in the shoes of this story, like how would we walk forward in our own life, and like,
right.
There's this process, this like personal process that is, I think, that I was needing.
Yeah.
Wasn't there.
I could see some space for breakout rooms, or something like that, where people could talk about it.
Yeah.
Get somebody else's point of view, and
yeah, like let's get somewhere. Let's like
kick it around. Yeah.
Yeah, let's be wrestling. Let's be in the act of saving.
Right.
That's so much of what's attracting me, and what I'm seeing with something like Dance Church. Like, it's about being in process with a specific what? Yeah, being in process aimed at authentic, good, and life-affirming values in mind. And the church service kind of takes you through a sort of process.
Right.
But it's so... well, it's just so disembodied. Like, kind of, yeah, impersonal. Like,
yeah, well, because all of it came from somewhere else. It came from this book or a series of books, but it didn't come from anybody who was there. Who was there today. And there's a handful of guys who were kind of the messengers, more or less. but they're passing on the message. They're not composing it.
Yeah, and I think that's the missing piece, like, and I'm kind of digging into this because there's really important parts to the church experience that should be continued, like, but the act of composing, like, I kind of just relate to, like, the act of, like, critically thinking, and like authentically meditating on something, and being in the being in the
present,
the process, the action of it.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking of Jesus's whole thing of I am the way.
Yes.
And that's just something that just gets, tossed around and said a bunch, and you can say Jesus is the way, and it's supposed to mean something, and
you think?
Where what I wish of Christians and of myself is just continuing on this, like, being in process, but like Jesus is the way. It's like, how was he thinking and living? Like, try that on and, like, practice it. And usually it seems like the extent of that is, like, be, like, nice. But it seems like there's this whole depth of, like, what would that really mean?
More than that,
like, we're here to, like, if he's the way, what does that mean? How would we think in this moment? Like, let's try to, like, practice thinking like that about this, in terms of this issue or this topic and this topic today. And I imagine there are churches that are doing that kind of thing.
Seems like there ought to be.
I bet.
Yeah.
I would think so. I've just kind of ranted a bunch. What did you think of? What was your general feeling of
it was
the service?
It was pleasant, mildly nostalgic.
Okay. Yeah.
And pleasant. It's the best word I can think of offhand.
Yeah.
The people seemed nice, and they were welcoming. And
everyone seemed very, very friendly.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. It was all volunteer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Whereas, I mean, when I was a child, I can't say I did a survey or anything, but I'm sure there were lots of people who would rather be doing something else, and who came
just doing chores
because they felt like they ought to, and who maybe brought their children because they thought of it as their duty.
Yeah.
And of course the children had no say. But this wasn't like that. And I like that.
Yeah, it was a feeling like people were glad to be there.
Yes,
mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, that's nice too.
A little like dance church, where nobody has to be here.
Mm-hmm.
This is not required in any way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, only people that really want to. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's
So I enjoyed it.
Progress.
I can't say. Yeah, I doubt that I would go back. I'm not going to join.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I don't think I would.
But
I'm kind of curious about the other churches in the world. What's going on?
Oh yeah.
Is anyone on the cutting edge? Is anyone like?
Somebody must be. Yeah.
I'm curious.
Do you plan to go into any more in Chico or other places?
Probably.
You need a bigger sample, I think, would be.
I do, yeah.
In order.
Yeah, and because I am curious about like technically, like how would you make this work?
Mm-hmm.
And how could we design? I feel like kind of need to like how can we design a spirituality here, spiritual space, and how do we do that? Because I need it.
That's good enough.
Yeah. And yeah, so I'll very likely check out more.
Mm-hmm. There was a time in the late 70s, early 80s, something like that, when Neil and I and an old friend, we used to live I grew up next door to him.
Yeah, I remember you.
Yeah, Neil and I would go to a different church every Sunday. This was probably over the summer or something. But to wildly different congregations. And in fact, we even went to a meeting of Nichiren Shoshu Buddhists. That was the first time I ran across any Buddhism. That was very interesting. Lord knows. Because we do lots of different things, aiming for the same bliss or whatever it looks like.
So you've been to a lot of churches. You've been to a few here too? and throughout my life?
Well, I don't think so.
No?
No.
Have you had some, sorry, you can answer this at any point, but I'm also curious, like, have you had good, really memorable church experiences, like good?
Yes. And I've had good experiences even at St. Edmund's, which was fairly regimented and very old school.
Yeah.
And I'd say over I don't know, we went to maybe 10 or 12 different churches, something like that. And and your mother and I went to, I'd say at least 3. Mostly one that was, I think, Unitarian. It was pretty much non-sectarian.
Yeah, I remember that name.
Yeah, and I think we took a class there once. And of course we went to the, religious science here for a couple of years anyway, 3 years. And I liked most probably the religious science experience. Because we went there initially because Joe, Nate's mother, somehow had met
Mom's sister.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Had met Michael Kahn. And so Michael and Karen were the first people we met actually in Chico.
Okay.
Which is how we started going to Cal Park. And I think we were both attracted to it in one way or another. I liked it mostly because nobody ever, although it was ostensibly Christian, and was Christian kind of in outlook and, moral code, more or less. But nobody ever mentioned Jesus. Then, never came up. They just talked about principles and behavior and stuff like that.
It got more elemental.
Got more directly to the point.
That's cool.
Right, and we went there for a few years anyway.
Yeah.
And that was probably my most profound church experience, I'd say.
Okay.
But right along with that was slowly ripening Sangha, a Buddhist Sangha that I went to for, I don't know, 2 or 3 years. Where, and this was the tradition of Thich Nhat Hanh, and that was also very good. Yeah. I'm not sure how I strayed away from that.
Yeah, it seems like that's something that Buddhism has offered the world, is a framework in which to focus on philosophy more than particular people or stories.
Right, and it's not so
principles.
Right, it's not so worshipy, because it's called Buddhism, but nobody's worshiping the Buddha. That's he was kind of a founder, but
so
that's all.
Not so worshipy.
Yeah.
It seems like that's the part that people have taken a lot of issue with. Traditional religions.
Yeah. I get it.
Yeah, but there's a part of me, this part of me that's trying to like unite different things. Is like, well, that's what Buddhism lacks. At the same time, for me, like, I think it's incomplete in the goal and the dream of like some complete spirituality. Like, it's incomplete without worship.
Oh.
Of some experience of worship, of some like divine, spontaneous communion with your connection to a greater order of the world, and your place in it, and a rightness to things, and a rightness to your place in the world, and a direct experience of that, which I know is possible because I experience it and have experienced it, and that's that's something that, ecstatic dance as a big umbrella term helps get at moments of like kind of embodied worshiping. But wouldn't it be great if we could be dancing, worshiping, meditating, contemplating specifically on principles and values and morality and how to be in the world, and working through specific problems, and listen to someone who inspires us, and have really meaningful, dramatic stories that we're engaging with and a part of and listening to,
okay. I don't know. I think that's why acid is illegal. It's too much all at once.
Yeah, it's a lot to do in one day.
It is.
I've kind of thought that maybe it's like each week is a different part of it in a month.
Yeah,
and it's on a monthly cycle or something. and it technically involves like different people who lead different parts of the thing, but a community revolving around this cycle of each of those things hitting all of the boxes. And wouldn't that be cool?
Yeah. Yes, it would. In my head, the philosophy is maybe the only part of that range of experiences that's verbal, that requires words. Because you don't really need any for the rest of it, for the feelings of communion and compassion and connection and all that. I saw a really good quote that seems to fit here. I can't remember who said it though, but it was something like spirituality. Let's see, I never should have brought this up without a copy. That spirit. Oh, I know. It's just in terms of the world of spirituality. Religion. Spirituality only becomes religion with words. If there are no words involved, then it's purely spiritual. And once you start attaching words, then it starts edging closer to religion, which I thought was an interesting comment.
I don't know about that though.
No?
No, it seems too low resolution. It seems too basic, like it feels like it gets religious when like the articulation and the speech is a step in that direction, but it gets religious when things get ritualized, and certain ideas get abstracted and codified into like ritual. That's when it gets religious. And the reason I'm like also is like that's been a kind of new aginess that I have being also in the world of dance intensely and more so. That's a nonverbal space. I've also there's also a tendency in me and in a lot of these spaces to devalue words and minimize articulation and see it as like, because certain things are ineffable, that to try is like silly and childish. And that I don't. It's certainly, that attitude certainly has not helped me. I think there is a need to experience things directly, and that's where like dance and Buddhism helps with that effort. But there's also what is available to be experienced directly expands with articulation.
Okay.
Like you're literally able to perceive more with an increased bandwidth of vocabulary and representation, and that's got to be a practice. It's got to be a living thing where everyone's a little bit of a writer, speaking ideally here.
Right.
Everyone's got to be a little bit of a writer or something like that, because it's something that if you stop, then it gets old and stale, and then it seems like words are useless. It's like, no, articulating is never useless in some sense. Like the act of it, being in the process of it, and it's something that never ends.
Yeah, it's I see what you mean. Yeah, it's I do tend to think of it as a worthwhile effort.
Obviously.
Yeah, clearly.
Yeah, and I don't think, and I guess, I don't think it should be divorced from spirituality, which seems like it's a common thing, because Well, it seems like spirituality, one of it, trying to define it, and one of its pieces is definitely increased understanding.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lifestyle of seeking to understand more.
Uh-huh.
And you have to, an understanding is like you stand upon what you've articulated and come to know.
Uh-huh.
And this is teaching myself here.
That's infallible.
For all those listening and watching. Saying this for my own benefit. Yeah, and that's, I mean, it seems like just an essential part of that process.
Mm-hmm.
A part of the mosaic of practices that would make up a complete spirituality.
Right.
You gotta engage, like the guy was saying, except he didn't say loins. But you gotta head, heart, gut.
Right.
And loins.
Yes. Yeah. There are always loins.
Yeah. They're afraid. The other part of the in imagining some ideal community, spiritual reality. There's a couple more that I missed, so it's like, wouldn't it be great if there was dancing, movement, meditation, philosophical exploration, experiences of worship, dramatic stories, inspiring individuals, giving testimonies, and a common, beautiful place in which all of that happens, and that's the church space that stands as a hub that grows with time as this community of people and practices grow. It doesn't all have to happen in one day.
Thank goodness.
Like each of these pieces of us happen anyway, all the time. But what if there was just a bit of organization in terms of each of these realms of engagement? And a unification of them, and a scheduling, and a bit of organization, and what might that be like? How could that? In my fantasy, it would like transform a place. If that actually happened, like it could transform a place.
So it certainly could.
And make could be really powerful and good. What was yours and Mom's attitude about spirituality when it came to us? You're pretty hands off.
Yeah. That's good. That's better than neglect.
Yeah, laissez-faire.
Right. I don't remember ever actually discussing it.
Did you guys talk about it between yourselves, like where you guys were at spiritually?
No, I mean I don't think so. But as far as I can tell and recall at this point, our spirituality was nonverbal, and if I had to describe it somehow, I don't know that it would get past do unto others.
It's golden rule.
Frankly, yeah.
Yeah, that's, I'm remembering that ringing in terms of explicit things that were taught. It's like golden rule.
Yeah. I don't know that we ever discussed, principles or, anything like that. I mean, she and I were almost entirely, intuitive. In the same way, we hardly ever talked about even our relationship, which may or may not have been a good idea, but just the way we recognized each other and came together with hardly any discussion or negotiation or anything. This is
wow.
We just we're clearly in agreement that we're all in.
Yeah.
This is it. Which clears up a lot.
Yeah.
And demands honesty, transparency. Yeah, just know. Whatever you think this is, you're right.
But you guys did go to church a bit.
We went to a couple of different places in Minneapolis, and then we went to religious science in Chico for, it was probably 3 or 4 years altogether, off and on.
How did that come about? Do you remember?
That we went to religious science?
To either, that made you start going to a couple churches in Minneapolis, and then what?
I don't know.
Why? Why?
I don't think.
Whose idea was that, do you think?
Yeah. Offhand, I would guess hers.
She was the
because
more overtly spiritually.
Right. Yeah. And had given spirituality a lot more attention than I had. Deliberate, conscious. And she had been to this Unitarian church that I think was in Golden Valley. And I don't think I had been, I'm not sure I had been to any church in the Twin Cities, except the cathedral. I went once just to see. But I know she told me about this Unitarian church, and we ended up going there, and I even went a couple of times without her. And as I said, we took a course once. But I don't. I think that's probably all. Because I don't remember going to. I remember we went to a Zen center at one point, but that was a few years in, because we were going mostly for yoga. Because my back had gone out to lunch, and this was '94. And that's really when I discovered yoga. But I think that's the only place we went. I mean, now that I think about it. But I went to, no, I did go to a black church in South Minneapolis, probably once. Because at that point I was still kind of in, exploratory mood.
Before you met Mom?
Yeah. And it was interesting just to compare other, still Christian, organizations and services, and just to see how people approached that area of history, study, folklore, and whatever however you think of it.
It's heavily interpretive.
No kidding.
The whole endeavor.
Yeah.
Of spirituality, it seems.
And this is after 3 or 4 major translations from, Aramaic to Greek to God knows what, Latin, and there's a lot of room.
Would you consider?
I don't think we ever talked about how we wanted to rear you and Joe, and
you just took it kind of
Jai.
a case at a time.
Yeah. We'll just do the best we can, but we're not going to try to sway them in any direction or.
Yeah, so you were like, you had fundamental commitment, we're doing it, and just taking it a case-by-case basis.
Right, right.
Situation by situation.
Yeah, I know you know me, and
aimed at trying to make this good.
Yeah, we both know we're going to do our best, for everybody involved. And we'll see what happens, see how it goes.
Yeah.
And I think that was success, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
If I had to do it over again.
On a bad basis.
Yeah. We just.
I think there are things I would add to that. But that's a solid, solid basis. Even just fundamental commitment and aimed at trying to do your best is.
Yeah, and we trusted each other and judgment.
You had respect for.
Right, so we didn't that wasn't a factor.
It's a powerful basis.
Well, it was our best guess.
Yeah, it's very interesting to hear that. I know that, but to hear it out loud that, not a lot was explicitly stated, and we weren't having sit-downs about free will and morality and more like philosophical concepts. That's not how we were engaging. And in some ways that lent itself to just kind of a basic trust and motion forward. And of course the ongoing encouragement to, though not explicitly, but I would say work things out in the act of doing and making, and with this fundamental goodness that was being aimed at, like trying to get at something, at the good. And it's interesting, hearing that, and my own, I have this like kind of, it's sometimes like a feverish like need for making things explicit, and like and this attention with my tendency to not. Like I have this intense desire to, and then also this tension of it's more in my nature to not. And I don't know if it's necessarily more in my nature, but it's more habitual, and I'm just seeing that more explicitly from what you were talking about. Like it is kind of, that's where we were coming from. And I'm in this place of like really feeling the need to track my life consciously, and wanting to understand things explicitly, and wanting to understand more intuitive things explicitly, and then also be really just heavily kind of captivated and needing dance. That is an implicit sort of experience. It's just an interesting dynamic I find myself in. I wanted to ask, and then I'm probably be good, but just generally, do you consider yourself spiritual? What do you think about spirituality? What is spirituality?
Am I spiritual? Sure. In that, I think there's way more going on than we know about. And that there are forces and influences of which we are unaware. And so in my head, there's lots of room for all sorts of spiritual assertions and influences. But it's not tied to any particular belief system. I think there are certain things that are useful, like meditation and movement. But I think where that leads you depends on who you are. Yeah, and being outside, and I think gardening is fairly spiritual. Just to be in touch with living things.
Yeah, it seems like anybody who does it would say that.
Yeah.
To be, communing with living things, communing with the ongoing living of things,
right?
The growth of things. That process is just
right. It's much older than all of us.
Functioning,
yeah.
Being in practice, practicing, being a part of that.
And
something that comes up with that is in my own, trying to define spirituality, like what is my spirituality, what should spirituality be, and at least in terms of things that are spiritual practices, are fundamentally like life affirming. Like, and in that way that gardening is.
Right.
That's the whole point.
Right.
Is learning and meditating on how to affirm the life of the things you're growing. Is there anything you were going to say?
A couple of weeks ago, I guess it was, I met a guy who was just, I don't know, he saw me out front, and he tried to strike up a conversation, but he speaks no English, and I speak, virtually no Spanish.
Okay.
And still, we managed to communicate enough to get along. And for me to hire him to do some yard work, and he has a wife and two little girls, one infant and one 3-ish. And our connection still feels primarily spiritual, because it's largely nonverbal. I mean, sometimes there's a lot of talking, but there's not a lot of understanding. There's not a lot of verbal comprehension.
But there is an understanding.
But eventually we work at it, and we, work up to something we can agree on, and that we both are in accord with. And that's, for me, that's a kind of manifestation of spirituality. That, that nonverbal communication, sometimes with, goofy gestures.
Sure.
And it's funny when he has something to say, it was as though, at least initially, it was as though, although he knew I didn't speak Spanish, because I know enough to say no hablo español.
No comprendo,
No comprendo, no. He would say things, he would tell me stuff anyway, that he knows, yes, he would just say it probably as plainly, as he could. And eventually I found a way to, a website where we could use my laptop and kind of clear up some of the, some of the fuzzy areas. But that feels like a spiritual connection, or at least a connection in which I am aware of a spiritual component.
When you're aware of something shared,
right,
is
right.
one thing that comes to mind. And in a case like that, you can't use words to get at a place of communion, and so it forces you into like either not engaging at all, or getting at some underlying communication and sense of sharedness, and that feels like a spiritual reality, to me too, a sign of spirituality. Like, and it makes me think that like one aspect of, if you're gonna call it spiritual, it's gonna be able to get that. It's like it's fundamentally like a unifying experience,
right?
And and practices that are aimed at unifying, creating greater unification between things. It's like an element of spirituality,
right?
And
yeah, it's something
pointing to something, a place where it is unified.
Yeah,
which would be
right. It's a hint. Yeah,
God. One word for it.
right.
Yeah, and for me that's like, connection, human connection is definitely,
right.
And romance has been really the biggest,
Mm-hmm.
The most spiritual experiences in the connective realm for me is,
Mm-hmm.
and from there I go to like, a sense of connection, but also a sense of like expanding connection, like when you feel like you're getting closer with someone, like that's a spiritual experience.
Mm-hmm.
And then back into reaching for like being in the act of getting closer, and the practice of getting closer,
Right.
developing, understanding, expanding, articulating, like being in that place of some sort of like deeper unity, deepening unity. For me, in wrestling with the idea of God recently, like, so what's up? Like, what is this?
That's how you talk to God?
These days,
What's up?
yeah, like, so what the fuck? What's the point of that word? And what even is that? And what's the utility? And one thing one answer to that has been like God as a transcendent thing, like God as something that's always beyond, the idea goes something like it's essential for really getting at connection and the truth and beauty and goodness. Because there has to be some awareness, as you were saying, of there being way more than we understand, and that there's some level of truth that we haven't perceived yet, and some level of goodness we haven't perceived yet, some level of beauty, some level of connection, love that we haven't perceived yet. And that's like a prerequisite to be able to even look, like focus enough to perceive the truth. And like there has to be like that scientific kind of hunger for something you don't know,
right,
to even look. And thinking that like there's an element of you can't even perceive those things unless you're looking with a kind of hunger.
Right.
Like your eyes won't focus enough. So
right.
You literally won't even see it unless you're like seeking, hungry.
Right. Because there are always distractions. Any number of things can get in the way.
Yeah, you'll be just driven to pay attention to the loudest
right.
thing. And so that's one utility of the idea of God, like, and a God that you can get closer to, and that wants you to get closer to it. Is
right, not the sky God.
Yeah, the more like the force God.
Right, right.
Because for me it was like, I won't even bother really trying to get at things. Get at the truth. I won't have an active relationship with developing myself, my relationships, the quality of things, unless I believe like there's a transcendent reality. And that transcendent reality can be glimpsed and spun into wool, spun into thread.
Right. Coat of many colors.
Yeah. Yeah. And so when it comes to the idea of God and like someone, because there's this issue of personalizing the God, you know, and anyone who's had a spiritual experience can probably say like, it's clearly beyond the personal, but it also has to be personal. And this is part of like the issue with like I'm trying to wrestle with Christianity a bit and give it credit. It's like there has to be, for you to even like for your ego, for your body to care enough, there has to be like an image of a person that you can relate to. It's got to feel personal in some sense. And it's probably just training wheels, scaffolding that will, clothing that will have to change, but the need for the clothing is real and valid while we're human. And this is why I think partially the idea of a preacher is still valid, and someone giving a sermon, like, it needs work, but
it's still worth the effort, though.
Yeah, I think it is. Because we need images of people that are ahead of us. And we need to see the Spirit of God moving through somebody, moving through a body. And
a concrete example.
Yeah, to get that mirror neuron experience going. Cool. I'm glad we went to church.
Yeah, me too. That was good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can imagine going again.
To a different one. Maybe we'll try another.
Yeah.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe we'll do a series. Maybe we'll go to a kirtan or something.
Right. Right.
I hear the Jews are up to some,
Yeah.
some stuff.